as the COO, the Chief Outcome Owner. And we also
Right.
know that where he's led you today with Be Direct,
Mhm.
you are here on Earth, the Chief Operating Officer
That is correct.
at Be Direct. And Henri, I remember you had started to tease us out a little bit when you spoke at our CBMC group, but it's just phenomenal work that you all have going on over there. So talk about your role as COO at Be Direct, and then just the importance of I mean, goodness, corporate board preparedness and placement. I have not heard of anyone doing that, certainly on that level with this group of people. So talk to us about Be Direct.
Absolutely. So we are, to our knowledge, we are the first company globally that is focused on preparing and placing Black executives and entrepreneurs on corporate boards on the African continent. The reality is that um, when you speak about corporate board work here in the United States, it's a very small group and it's a very closed club, and it's almost like getting your first job. You can't get a job without having experience, and you can't get experience without having a job, right? And so while we support all of the corporate board preparedness programs that are here in the United States, and there are several, what we also know is that corporate board placement in the United States is all about your network. If you aren't tied into the right networks, you will not get those opportunities. Now multiply that times Black executives and entrepreneurs, because one, many of us are not in the senior level executive positions to even be looked at for those roles. And then those that are in those senior executive positions, many of them don't have the network, which is why you'll see for people, regardless of their color, you'll see the same people sitting on multiple boards,
Mhm.
right? Because those folks have been vetted, and companies tend to be very risk adverse, and so they go back to the same well time after time after time. What VDirect does is we identify corporate executives at the vice president to C-suite level, our sweet spot being vice president to senior vice president, who quite frankly are not getting those opportunities here in the United States, as well as Black entrepreneurs who are successfully running multi-million-dollar businesses. And we take them through a 8-month training program.
Hmm.
That training program consists of three different aspects. One aspect is corporate governance training, but it's corporate governance training from an African-centric perspective. So corporate governance in the United States is a little bit different than corporate governance on the African continent. Much of corporate governance in the United States is driven by compliance. So, you've got Sarbanes-Oxley, right? You've got SOX compliance. If you're a publicly traded company, you've got the Security and Exchange Commission. If you are a consumer-based company, you've got Federal Trade Commission. So there's a lot of regulatory and compliance things that drive corporate board governance in the United States. While there is compliance in on the African continent, most of it, most of the corporate governance piece is driven by best practices, and it's best practices from Europe, best practices from the United States. But while there is compliance, there's a lot of just kind of best practice sharing as well. And so we've partnered with a company based out of Cape Town, South Africa, which is one of the premier corporate governance training companies. They do corporate governance training for both public and private companies. We've partnered with them to provide the corporate governance training piece. In addition to that, and as important, we do what we call our cultural dexterity training. Because the reality is, you can't take a Western trained person, regardless of the amount of melanin in their skin. You can't take a Western trained person, place them on a different continent in a different country, and expect them to be successful, because they just will not.
Yeah.
Because culturally, Black executives and Black entrepreneurs in America culturally are very different than Black executives and Black entrepreneurs on the African continent. And so we spend as much time talking about how do you navigate culture as we do in terms of teaching technical skill sets regarding corporate governance. And I'll give you this one example and then I'll move on. One of my best friends is Nigerian, and I believe I brought this up to your group. One of my best friends is Nigerian. He is 68 years old. He's been in the United States now for 50 years. He came here when he was 18 to go to college. He views himself as, he was born and raised in Nigeria, right?
Mhm.
He views himself as a Nigerian living in America. When he goes home to Nigeria, he's viewed as an American visiting Nigeria,
Mm.
although he was born and raised in Nigeria.
Wow.
Because of the fact that he has been in the United States now for so long, he is no longer considered Nigerian by the people that he grew up with, because culturally now he has culturally assimilated into being an American. And so we go through a great deal of the skill sets training and having people understand their own biases, how they approach things, and also talking to them about how do you navigate culture. And Africa is not a monolith, right? Many times people think and talk about Africa as if it is a country versus a continent, right? Africa is a continent that has 55 different countries in it, and each one of those countries have their own culture, and there are subcultures within those cultures, right? So to approach um, Ghana as if it were South Africa, as if it were Kenya, would be to try to approach the UK as if it were Spain, as if it were France, right? All of them are considered European, but a Brit considers him or herself very different than a Spaniard, considers him or herself very different than an Italian. And so we spend a huge amount of time not only on technical skills of corporate governance, but also how do you navigate culture. In
Mm.
addition to that, the third part of that three-legged stool is we have partnered with a company based out of Johannesburg to do executive coaching. So each person going through our program will work on a one-on-one basis with an executive coach who, by the way, not only are they a certified executive coach, but they are a certified executive coach that has domain knowledge regarding corporate governance on the African continent.